All right, 5 best Texas overlanding destinations ranked. Right off the bat, there's an oxymoron here. Texas and overlanding. The two don't exactly go hand in hand. Texas, a state that is mostly private land, is colloquially known as a state not conducive of the hobby of overlanding. It's commonly thought of that in order to go overlanding, you need to have miles and miles of public land and trails and off-roading dirt roads that are miles from everybody and that have dispersed camping that's allowed on them. A lot of places that allow this are National Forest lands, Bureau of Land Management, or BLM lands, and national parks, which Texas does have a national park. Actually, a national seashore and a national park in Big Bend. But other than those two places, it's pretty much mostly privately owned. But if you look hard enough, you can find ways to go on an overlanding adventure in the state of Texas. Despite what a lot of people think, Texas is a land with a varied landscape. It's got miles and miles of coastline, also rugged mountain ridges that top over 6,000 feet, actually over 7,000 feet in elevation. You have lush green forests in the eastern part of the state, and you have barren but beautiful deserts in the far western part of the state. You also have flat prairies and grasslands, and then you've got the in-between lands such as the Texas Hill Country. So you might be thinking, what would the 5 best overlanding places in Texas be? Well, I have them for you today, and I've ranked them. So let's just hop into it. Number 5 is Merus Adventure Park. Merus Adventure Park is a privately owned piece of land that lies in the panhandle of Texas, roughly 20 miles outside of the city of Amarillo. It lies in an area called Palo Duro Canyon, which is adjacent to the aptly named state park with the same name, Palo Duro Canyon State Park. So it's in the same landscape. It's within the same canyon that Palo Duro Canyon State Park is in, which is dubbed the Grand Canyon of Texas, also the second largest canyon in the United States, the continental United States, right behind the Grand Canyon. It's a pretty awesome place to go off-roading, to go camping. Not something you might think of when you think of going overlanding, but it does have attributes that contribute to giving at least the same vibe as when you're overlanding, such as in public lands out west or even certain places back east. I'm gonna give some pros and cons to Merus Adventure Park as one of the top 5 overlanding destinations in Texas. The pros are it has beautiful views. It's very reminiscent of places in the Southwest with its red rocks, its canyons, its gorges, and you go in there and you're in the canyon, in Palo Duro Canyon itself. So it's like you have mountains. It's like you're surrounded by mountains, right? You got the canyon walls all around you. It has dispersed primitive camping. Now these are selected, designated sites that you have to pick ahead of time. You can't just go in there and pick a place on the fly like you probably could out in the public lands of the West, but it does have dispersed camping, primitive camping. There are like fire rings, I believe, at least at some of the sites, and it gives you the feeling that you're on public land. It's closer to the more populated areas of Texas than going out west, even though it is quite a long drive. It's quite arguably one of the most scenic places in the state of Texas, or at least scenic places to overland in Texas due to the red rock scenery and the types of trails. You can find trails from just graded main park roads to level 5 rock buggy trails. So if the difficulty of the trail is what makes overlanding for you, then Merus obviously has it. which some of the other areas in Texas may not, or actually don't, in terms of difficult off-roading. But to me, overlanding is more than just finding the most difficult trails. That would be just outright off-roading or rock crawling. But a lot of us do like to have some sort of technicality when we take our very capable, very built off-road rigs into the wild. So kind of Merus has a little bit of that balance. You can challenge yourself, and you can still do some remote dispersed camping in sort of a controlled overlanding environment, if you will. Some cons to it are it's expensive. I found that out earlier this year. Not insanely expensive where it kept me from going to it, but when you think of overlanding, you think of the public lands, and these are places you can just publicly camp. You don't need a permit. You don't have to pay somebody usually to go camping. So to have to pay to play to go at a park kind of detracts a little from the overlanding aspect of it. And I think they charge a number of fees. It's not just one entry fee, you're good to go. You have to pay an entry pass per person per day, and that's for the driver, and then for the passengers. The driver daily pass might be included in the vehicle pass, so you have to pay a daily 4x4 vehicle pass per vehicle, and it's per day that you're there. So if you camp overnight, you have to take into consideration the day you arrive and then the day you leave. You're going to be paying that 4x4 daily pass for both of those days. And you're going to be paying the individual person passes for each day as well. So it starts adding up quick. They also make you pay, if you don't already have one, to rent a GMRS radio, because they have a policy of being able to call when you're going into the canyon. You can't really tell if there's somebody at the bottom, and they want to be able to, for safety reasons, obviously it's a very good system to be able to call, hey, I got a vehicle going down, because some of these trails that lead into the canyon are quite narrow, or not exactly enough to fit two rigs side by side. So they err on the side of caution and having a radio system set up. So if you don't already have one, they make you rent one, or else you're just not gonna be able to off-road there. So to me, that was a con. I'm a ham radio operator. I've already invested all my time and money into learning the aspect of amateur radio, which is a great tool to have. Number 4 best overlanding destination in the state of Texas is the Texas Hill Country. Probably not, it's a little bit difficult, but you can make an overlanding trip work in the Texas Hill Country. It may not be what a lot of people consider to be overlanding. Some of the pros are, it's scenic. There's miles and miles of country dirt roads that you can explore, and there's lots of literature about this. You go online, there's forums and pages where they talk about the Texas Hill Country overlanding route or the backcountry discovery route, and it's not just one set trail. There's actually a number of county roads, and what these are, that most of the land, or pretty much all the land in the Hill Country is privately owned when it comes to off-roading. But the county roads that lead to a lot of these private properties are public. They're owned by the county, so you can drive on them. You just can't get off of these roads anywhere at all. Some of the residents get really touchy about that. Even if you're pulled over on the side, I've had ones come up to me and tell me I shouldn't be there, or I was filming something, and they're like, you can't do that here. But I was pretty sure I was mostly on the public road. But anyway, these roads are very scenic. Sometimes they have a lot of water crossings. There's no bridges, so if it's raining or washed out, the trail could be a little bit more difficult. Just depends. And another thing is, well, where do you camp? Well, there's certain private land owners along these roads that will let you camp. You just have to look it up on websites such as HipCamp or maybe even Airbnb. You can find places to camp. You can also take advantage of a lot of the different parks in the area. There's some of these are public parks that let you camp. There's the South Volcano River State Park near Junction. There's also Devil's River State Natural Area. I've camped at both of these, and they're beautiful. Even though they are a little bit more developed, it still gives you a feeling of you're kind of out in the woods or out in the back country. And they're located next to beautiful geographic features or significant geographical features, such as the Llano River or Devil's River. Usually they're along some sort of river. That's where a lot of the recreation is in this part of Texas. So, and there's also private parks. Dos Rios RV Park. I've camped there before. It's very lovely. It's along the Llano River as well. And then one of my personal favorites is Barefoot Camp and RV Park. And I camped there in the middle of winter one year, and I had the entire place to myself, basically. It was like a cold front had just moved through, but I really love that. That's where I actually saw the ringtail cat, or ringtail, the elusive ringtail that a lot of people say doesn't really exist anymore, but I saw one. I didn't know what it was at the time. I thought it was a raccoon, but that was a pretty cool experience and put me along one of the, quote, overlanding trails, the Chisholm Trail that I was running. You can find that on Onyx Off-Road. The cons of the hill country, it's nothing too technical. If you're looking for even the most remote rock crawling, you're not going to find it on these dirt roads unless there's some really insane washout from some storm or rain event. Although, if you want to get your off-roading rock crawling fix, you can do it, because there are a couple of off-road parks in this region. There's Hidden Falls Adventure Park, just outside of Marble Falls, Texas. Trails from mild to wild, buggy trails down to just dirt roads. And then also towards the western, I'm not even sure you consider it hill country, but I'm calling it part of the hill country, Escondido Draw Recreation Area. I think that's a lesser known park because it's just so far out. It's located just outside of Ozona, Texas, which is this small little town along Interstate 10, about halfway between San Antonio and El Paso. And it's a great park. They've got the trails there. They got all range of trails. They have camping on site, primitive and full hookup RV type camping. And it's a great location. I think it's underrated. I think it's just not as accessible as, say, Hidden Falls or some of the other Texas off-road parks. But I was able to use that as kind of a stopover on a previous overlanding adventure as well. And so there is that. So you can get a little bit of technicality in there, but you still have to rank it a little bit lower because of that. There's very little elevation change, although more than if you were just on the flat West Texas prairie, or the Llano Estacado, as they call it. It's not that flat, thank goodness. But if you're looking for really tall mountains, you're not going to find that out there either. Not insane steep climbs unless you're like at Hidden Falls or Escondido Draw. So the third best Texas overlanding destination is the East Texas National Forests. This includes specifically Angelina, Davy Crockett, Sam Houston, and Sabine National Forest in East Texas, in what they call the piney woods of East Texas. Very wooded area, very wet area. It gets an awful lot more rain than, points further west. It's very similar to kind of what there is in neighboring Louisiana and maybe parts of Arkansas. I rank this higher than the hill country because these are actual public lands that are located in Texas. They may not be incredibly huge like ones you find out west, but they have Forest Service roads, they got hiking trails, they have dispersed camping along these trails, and there's maps of them so you can explore. There's the motor vehicle use maps. So you can kind of do the same type of exploring you can do in the national forests of the West or even of the East. And so that's what I really like about it, is being able to go out there and disperse camp. And just, drive along a trail. Hey, there's a fire ring. You can tell it's a previous campsite, and you can go camp there. There are limitations though, but for the most part, it is just like when you're camping out west. And these sites are free. That's definitely a plus. You don't have to pay to play. I mean, there is a 14-day limit for the camping during a 30-day period. If you do the research, that's actually one of the main rules at a lot of the national forests, or maybe all of them. But you also have to look out for hunting season. Then you're not allowed to disperse camp everywhere. And hunting season is, from my understanding, late September through January. Then you can only camp in a designated hunter or hiker campsite. This is straight from the National Forest Service page for a lot of these national forests. So you have to be, I guess, in a more just developed campsite if you're gonna go visit during those times. Okay, so I've gone over the pros of the East Texas National Forest. Now the cons would be those limits I mentioned on the time and the hunting season. But actually, I found that sometimes good used, previously camped at dispersed sites are kind of hard to find sometimes. We had an outing where a couple friends of mine went out. We found a place to camp for the first night, but the second night was a little bit more difficult. The first night we were camped at actually like one of those hunter or hiker camps, I believe, because in the middle of that night we had some people show up with their horse trailer. We're gonna go horseback riding. It spooked the crap out of us. It was like 5 a.m. This vehicle just pulls in all loud and metal clanking around. We thought, this is it. We're going to be jumped. We're going to be robbed or something. But they were just there to show up for the horse trail or hiking trail that was right there. We didn't even realize it. But the second night, we tried to camp over in one of the neighboring national forests. I believe it was Angelina. I would go down and look at these forest roads on the map. Like, there should be something off this road, but a lot of them were overgrown and just they would dead end at a place that wasn't very favorable for camping. So you just have to keep that in mind. It's you're going to have to either know ahead of time a really good place out there to camp, or it's hit or miss. You may want to plan it. We ended up camping at a state park after that was in the area, or it might have been like not a state park or some other. We had to pay a small fee. It was like $7 or $8 to camp, but it turned out to be really nice. We were actually really satisfied with that. It still felt like you're out in the woods, and it was right off a lake, and that was nice. But just I gotta dog it for that. But I put it at number 3 because it's a little bit more public landy than the hill country and obviously Merus. But still not the best one in Texas. And we're gonna go on to number 2. Overlanding destination in Texas, and that is the Texas coast. The Texas coast, Padre Island National Seashore, or PINS, Matagorda, or South Padre Island. There might even be a few more in there I don't know about or missed, or maybe Galveston Island, but most of that to me looked like it was not able to just disperse camp. But a lot of these have miles and miles of untouched sandy beaches that you can drive on if you got a four-wheel drive vehicle. I mean, people sometimes take sedans on them when the conditions are right. In particular, Padre Island is my favorite one. It has the longest stretch, the 60-mile stretch, and it's also one of the largest barrier islands in the world. When you get out there, even just past mile marker 10, you start feeling the remoteness of it. It's right along the beach, so it's very serene and scenic in its own way. You can't really alter, unless you've just paved the beach, you can't really alter that much. There's nothing down there. They haven't, so what you see down there is the natural state of the beach, which is really nice, and it's hard to find that in Texas, obviously. And you can set up camp anywhere along the coast. Anything between the sand dunes and the water. You can't go up into the dunes, that's illegal. You can kind of walk. I've walked up there before and checked it out, but some people even said that wasn't legal. But standing on the sand, it's just gonna get blown and the footprints will be gone. There's fishing, so if you're into fishing or into other things, there's not gonna be any sort of rock crawling. Now the conditions can vary depending on how much rain they've had or what level the tide is. So, I've been out there before when I was towing the M1102 trailer and with the Rubicon 392, and that sand was real deep. It was wet in areas. You'd think that would make it better, but there were huge ruts in the sand, and it had to actually work really hard to pull that trailer all the way, 60 miles down, 60 miles back. And that's why I got such horrible gas mileage on that trip that I had to use my extra fuel I had, which a lot of people seem surprised that was the case. And rightly so, because when I did the same trip in the Power Wagon, no trailer this time, but all the weight and everything on the bed of the truck instead, I didn't need any extra fuel at all. I wasn't even close. I think we were like above half tank when we got back to pavement. And part of it might be the beach conditions, but I think it was also just not having to drag a trailer through very high rutted sand. So just keep that in mind. A lot of people have an overlanding trailer, and I know others may not have had the same issues I had, but that's just something to consider. But the cons, definitely the sand, tons of it. It gets everywhere. It's so hard to keep it from getting into things. One of the major cons, if you have a rooftop tent, is if you get even minor amounts of sand on the retractable ladders, they start to not slide as well. It's almost ruined one of my rooftop tent ladders, the Smitty built one. I mean, the steps were all, janky after that, because they wouldn't fully, the pieces wouldn't telescope as well when it has fine sand in there. So I think next time I'm going to try using there's this mat that I can put the foot of the ladder in and have something to rinse shoes or feet at the bottom, because that's what caused the sand to get in there, is me stepping on it with sandy feet. The wind is nearly constant down there, mostly from the sea, but it can be a nuisance, especially if you're in a tent and the fabric flaps around a lot. The tides are constantly changing, so you definitely have to keep track of that. I've heard stories of tents washed away because the high tide came in overnight. And another con is, other than the main beaches and a couple of the side trails on the lagoon side, there's not much else to explore. It's just the sand, it's the coast. It's nothing really to distinguish mile 20 from mile 40. If you've done a lot, you might be able to tell, but that is one con to it. It's not like you're out there exploring, seeing different environments in the same trip. And it's kind of an out and back trip. That leads us to the #1 best Texas overlanding destination. This is my personal favorite, Big Bend, or the Big Bend region. Specifically Big Bend National Park and Big Bend Ranch State Park. And there's also the Black Gap, there's the Black Gap National Wildlife Refuge. I haven't been to that yet, but that's also a region right next, it's adjacent to Big Bend National Park. It also has kind of an overlanding type, you've got dirt trails in there and places to camp. Now, like I said, this is my personal favorite. If I'm thinking of, if I can go anywhere right now to go camping and overlanding in Texas, I would choose Big Bend. Maybe not in the summer. It is rather hot, but there are some higher elevation areas that you can visit that might be a little bit cooler, but they're not along the off-roading primitive trails that are in the park. So not exactly in summer, although I am curious. I'd like to head out there sometime in the summer just to see what it's like. But I know it'll be hot, but maybe it'll cool off some at night. There are some rain showers and storms that they get in the summer months as well. Might cool things off, but as my understanding, some of that can make the roads and trails impassable as well. So, but the pros of Big Bend, miles and miles of off-roading dirt trails, and they're not just all flat graded, park roads. I mean, they're all park roads, but a lot of them can be very primitive and actually have some level of technicality. Now, you're not going to find level 5 rock crawling out here, but it's extremely remote, extremely rugged. If you break down or break something out here, you're pretty far, and a tow vehicle out here would cost tremendously. So you want to come prepared. It's not to be taken lightly. It's one of the most remote regions in the entire country. Because it's very remote in terms of where it is in Texas, where it is in the continental US, and even the other, it shares an entire border with Mexico. And even that part of Mexico is extremely remote and rugged. It's why that region saw the least amount of border crossings, during the height of it, like during the Biden administration, and even during the Trump administration, that number fell to like 0 per year. I mean, virtually 0. I think they had like 20 arrests or something from people trying to cross over. But We have a small border town right there at Boquillas that we went to one year. I have a video on the channel about it, and it was nice. I mean, I don't think they got, you know, you're not seeing very much trafficking in that area. You're not seeing a lot of illegal crossings. But it's a great place to go. I think because of the remoteness, you really feel like you're out there. You have to be self-sufficient. And this goes for both the national park and the Big Bend Ranch State Park, but the state park's actually more rugged and remote than even the national park is. The national park's more visited. The roads are a little bit tamer, mainly in the pinstriping department. Keep in mind, if you go to Big Bend Ranch State Park, some of the more remote trails on the property have tons of desert plants and will give your vehicle a thorough amount of desert pinstriping. This isn't the case in the national park. It's a little, the vegetation's a little bit scaled back, at least from what I've experienced. And I've been pretty much to every off-road trail in the national park. There's tons of remote and dispersed camping options. They all do need to be reserved or, you know, called for. You can't just go pick a spot on the fly. But there are ones in the national park that are only on a first come, first served basis that day. So if you're trying to reserve one in advance, the most remote ones, you have to get there that day and just reserve them then. You can't just do it online. There are ones you can reserve. They're just more commonly used. They're not as far into the park, but they're still dispersed camping. They're still in the national park, which is in and of itself pretty remote. I mean, it's located in this tiny little corner of Texas, far away from any major city. It is that remote. It's one of the dark sky areas, you know, internationally recognized dark sky areas of the country. The stargazing there is amazing. There's very few, I think the only glow from any city lights is from the town of Presidio to the west, and to the east. I don't even think you see anything. It's that remote. It reminds me a lot of the desert Southwest, and that's why I am very fond of it. I come from the Phoenix, Arizona, Las Vegas, Nevada. That's the areas I've done most of my off-roading. So it reminds me of that. Even Southern California. It actually looks very much like parts of Southern California, Southern Nevada that we used to explore and off-road in many, many years ago when we lived there. And that's what I like about it. It's not your typical Texas setting, even though a lot of people think that's what Texas is. They think of, you know, the desert and, you know, West Texas, and but the majority of the people in Texas live in a much greener part of Texas, a much more wooded area, or even just more on the prairie, like up in Dallas, Fort Worth area, or the Panhandle. But this is raw Texas. It is the part of Texas that people think it does look like, and that's what it looks like. Towering canyon walls, mountains that go, you know, above 5,000 and 6,000 feet, great elevation changes. If you love hiking in the mountains, Big Bend has that. There's bear boxes at all of these primitive campsites because they have black bear within the national park, even in the desert parts of the park. Very common. So it has excellent views. It's extremely scenic, has elevation relief. Like I said, numerous mountain ranges, so you don't feel one campsite doesn't look just like the other campsite. It's every place out there just you feel like you're out there. I love that you can see the horizon, beautiful sunrises and sunsets. This is why I love Big Bend. This is why it's the top one for me, even though it doesn't have all those elements of overlanding, such as just being able to pick your spot. But other than that, it's got pretty much all of them down. The camping sites in the national park seemed a little bit more groomed than the ones in the state park, but I've only camped at one in the state park, and that was one made for a group. So it was pretty flat. It was actually nice. We didn't have to level anything with the rooftop tents, and it actually had, you know, fire ring, so we could have an actual campfire, which I'm very fond of having. And I'm going to go into that with the cons of at least the national park, which is you can never have an actual open fire in the national park. The state park you can. They have fire rings there, but the national park, no. You'll have to bring your own sort of portable fire pit or just do without a fire, which I've had to do in the past. It's not a deal breaker, but if I can have one, I really would like to have one. The national park's the only one of the two that has an actual Jeep Badge of Honor trail, and that's Black Gap Road and Old Ore Road. Black Gap Road's kind of up in the air. They're like repairing some trail damage on that from last year when they had torrential rains. But you know, there's rumors that they're paving that so they can start building parts of a virtual wall down there along the border. But who knows? That part of the trail has been closed for at least a year. Old Ore Road is a very fun trail. It's semi-technical. If you're in a stock vehicle, it'll be a little more technical, but if you're in a lifted vehicle, it's just fun and it's easy, but it's very scenic, and you do have, you know, undulating terrain and ruts. It's not just flat and graded. So it's a fun trail. I find it to be fun even if it's not fully testing my vehicle out. And then there's the other activities. There's the hiking. You can also kayak down the Rio Grande, and you know, they're worried a lot of that's going to go away if they start doing all these perimeter type of virtual walls or whatever, but hopefully that won't be the case. Hopefully they'll still be able to do things down there. And there has to be water. The river doesn't always flow, but just very scenic areas like Santa Elena Canyon and Merus Canyon. That trail, the hiking trail at Merus Canyon, was one of my favorite hikes I've ever done. It was pretty strenuous for me, but it's not the most strenuous out there. But the views into the canyon were reminiscent of the ones at Torweep, even though, you know, that's overlooking the Grand Canyon. But it was really cool to be standing, you know, 1,000 or 2,000 or however many feet higher than the canyon. I think it was like 1,000 feet, but still seeing the canyon, the river below, and knowing that all the land on the other side is in Mexico was pretty cool. That was one of my favorite. The cons to Big Bend, the fact that they have to be reserved. You can't just show up. Other than the ones that are reservable that day, but still, you have to pick one. You can't just be like, here, I'm just going to drive in, and if that one's available, I'm going to go get it. You know, no, you have to check in with the visitor center and reserve one and pay for it. It's not free. It's not very much. I forget exactly how much it was, but it's not free. Some of the sites are limited to a certain number of vehicles, so be wary of that. They counted my overlanding trailer as a vehicle. So we were usually limited because we were basically rolling with 3 vehicles and it was really just 2. So you got to be wary of that. That's a con. Once those sites are reserved, you're locked into them, just kind of like how you are at Merus. Unless you can get back to the visitor center or something before they close, which is usually pretty early, 4:30 or 5 or something. Some might find these trails to be too easy. I don't know. They're not any easier. They're not going to be easier than like the hill country trails or even the beach, unless the conditions are right. In some ways, you might find the most technical non-off-road park trails in the Big Bend area, especially in the state park, which there's some trails out there that are extremely gnarly, extremely rutted, extremely rocky. If you break down out there, it's going to be a long ways to get help. So those are my 5 Texas overlanding destinations ranked. Some honorable mentions. The Texas off-road parks. I'm referring to specifically Hidden Falls, Escondido Draw, Barnwell Mountain. Those are the big 3. I mean, you got Merus that I've already mentioned, but these, other than the top 5, you know, you can have an overlanding style adventure. You know, you could camp, make a base camp, explore those parks, get back to it. Or like I've done in the past, use that as a stepping stone to another place that you'll camp or another destination, and then do some off-roading or wheeling while you're there. So I have to mention that. At least Texas has places like that. They're pretty spread out. Barnwell Mountains in the northeast part of the state. Hidden Falls is kind of in the south central, between Austin and San Antonio, or just to the west. And then Escondido Draw is kind of like Midwest Texas. I don't really count that west. It's not west of Fort Stockton, but in that region, that's the main park in that area. So other than that, if you want to overland in Texas, you're going to have to go outside the state. And there are a few places that are just outside Texas. They're national forests. There's the Ouachita National Forest in Arkansas, which if you think about it, driving to that is probably about the same distance or less than going out to Big Bend or parts of West Texas. So there is that. And then there's also the Lincoln National Forest in New Mexico, which is located just north of like the Guadalupe Mountains. Actually, it's included in part of the Lincoln National Forest, the highest point in Texas, Guadalupe Peak, just south of that border in Texas. So that's kind of, you can kind of include that because it is closer to parts of Texas than even El Paso is. But yeah, that's what we're up for here in Texas. If you're into off-roading, overlanding on public land, it's hard to find, but you can do it. You just have to do your research. Hopefully this is part of that research, but do your own due diligence, look them up, look on the popular off-roading apps, onX Off-Road, Gaia GPS. There's probably stuff listed on all trails. You can have a good time in the outdoors in Texas. You just have to know what to do, what time of year to do it, and be ready for varying terrain. Be ready to drive a long distance to wherever you need to go. That's the only thing. That's why we have high speed limits here, is chances are you're going pretty far away. Hope you guys got something out of this. If you did, please like and subscribe. Share it with somebody you think will find this useful, and we'll see you on the next adventure. Take care.